Friends, we are going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. Sylvia Nagelberg. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it into silent mode at this time or turn it completely off. I'd also like to welcome everybody via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you for attending as well. And services will be conducted by Rabbi Yitzchak Falk.
We're going to begin with the 23rd Psalm. I'll read it in Hebrew, and then we can read it together in the English in your pamphlet. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, benot deshe yarbitzeni almei menuchot yenahaleni. Navshi yeshoveh v'yancheni b'magli tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha u'mishantecha hima yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shochan neged zorai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya. Ach, tov v'chesed yerdifuni kol yemei chayai, v'shafti b'veit Adonai leorech yamim. Together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He lead me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We're going to read a passage from Proverbs known as Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. Eshet Chayil miyimsa v'rachot mipni michra, batach bale bala v'shala lo yechsar. Gemaltu tov v'lo ra, kol yemei chayeha, darshat semer uvishtim v'tasbech havetz kapaya. Hai takoniot zocher mimerchak tavi lachma v'takom beod laila v'titin tereth leveta v'choch l'neroteha. Zama masadeh v'tikachehu mipri chapen etakarem. Chagra ma'oz matnea v'tamed zrotea. Tama kitov sachra lo yichbe balayla nera. Yadeha shilcha v'kishor v'chapet tamchu falech. Kappa parsa la'ani via deha shulchan le'aviron. Lo tira leveta mishale ki chol beita lavushanim. Marvadim astala shesh vergaman levusha. Noda basharim bala beshivto imzik ne'aretz. Sadin astavatim kor v'chagor natna knani. Oz v'hadar levusha v'tischak liyom acharon. Pia patcha v'hochma v'torat chesed ala shona. Sophia lichot beta v'lechem asut lo tochel. Kamo v'anel v'ashura bala v'halala. Rabot banut asu chayil v'atalit al kulana. Sheker achein v'hevel hayofi isha yirat Adonai hi tit halal. Tenula mipri yadeha v'halua v'shari masea. A woman of valor who can find. She is more valuable than pearls. Her husband's heart trusts in her. He will lack no benefit. She will repay his favors, not his insults, in all of her life circumstances. She searches for wool and flax, and her hands work adroitly. She becomes like the merchant ship. She brings her bread from afar. She rises while it is still yet night. She gives sustenance to her household and portions to her maidservant. When she sets her mind upon a field, she buys it. With the fruits of her labor, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and vigorously exerts her limbs. When she discerns that her wares are good, her lamp is not extinguished by night. She sets her hands to the distaff, and her palms grasp the spinning rod. She stretches out her palm to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. She need not fear for her household because of snow, for her entire household is clothed in scarlet. She made bread coverings for herself, linen and purple is her garment. Her husband is well known in the city gates as he sits among the elders of the land. She makes clothing and sells it and offers belts to the merchant. Strength and beauty are her garment. She smiles as she faces the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is upon her tongue. She watches Over the conduct of her household, she does not eat the bread of indolence. Her children rise up and extol her. So does her husband praise her. Many women have excelled, but you have surpassed them all. Charm is false and beauty empty breath. A woman who fears the Lord, she is praiseworthy. Commend her for the fruit of her hands, and let her deeds praise her in the city gates. We are gathered to give final honor and respect to Sylvia Nagelberg, nee Jacobson. She was the loving wife of the late Louis Nagelberg, happily married for over 67 years. Cherished mother of Linda Joy Watson, Alan Keith Nagelberg, and Stephen J. Nagelberg and his wife Corey. Adored grandmother of Larissa Joy Beck and her husband Tom, and the late Evan Watson, Scott Nagelberg, and Daniel Nagelberg. Great-grandmother of Sidney Joy Beck. Dear sister of Arlene Plotkin and her husband Paul. Fond daughter of the late Irving and Ella Jacobson. Loving aunt and cousin to many family members from Illinois to Florida, Tennessee to Arizona, and California to Hawaii. Sylvia was a beloved substitute teacher in the Lincolnwood and Skokie school districts for over 40 years, and she loved her many students and cherished the friendships she made with her fellow teachers. Sylvia was so loved and will be missed and will remain forever in our hearts. I'd like to call at this time Sylvia's daughter, Linda, who will be speaking with her daughter, Larissa, and her granddaughter, Sydney, all together.
As I look around the room, all I can think of is how much my mom would have loved to see all of you and all of you. Her favorite thing was being with people. She was the quintessential people person. And I don't know who loved parties more, my dad or my mom. My dad wanted to party for everything. My mother would start to talk him out of it, and then she would be the one that would be the happiest. And they gave great parties. There were occasions to gather our cousins and our relatives together. So we got to keep having parties. So I'm reflecting upon the gifts that Mom gave to us. First, there were tangible gifts. Of course, the really significant gifts are the intangible ones, but we decided to honor her with some tangible gifts. I'm wearing a ring that my dad gave me, a bracelet, and my daughter and my granddaughter are wearing her pearls. And fortunately, she loved jewelry, which that was great for us. She loved beautiful things, lucky for us. Anytime they went on their travels all over the world, we were gifted with beautiful things when they came back. They just appreciated beautiful things and beautiful gifts. I'm wearing purple in honor of my mom. Her favorite color became my favorite color, and we trace it all back to our cousin Nettie Roth. She started the whole thing. And to this day, of course, Mom still loved wearing purple, and so do I. In fact, I have purple couches in my home because my daughter, I inherited them from my daughter. Of course, another one of her gifts was her loving, caring nature towards her family and friends. She and my dad created the template for loving family. Everyone who knew them knew that they just carried that sense of connection and joy and love, and their priority was always their family and their children and their grandchildren. And she did get to meet Sydney last month, her great-grandchild, when we were here. And so we were really happy about that. Her friendly, outgoing nature, of course, always reminded me of this wonderful quote by William Butler Yeats: "There are no strangers here, only friends you haven't met yet." And all of you who knew my parents knew that my dad and mom would strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, in the grocery store, in a line, any trip they went on. And they ended up staying in touch with those people and traveling with them. And many of you are those people that they met over the years in that way. My brother's going to be talking more about her very specific relationships with her as a substitute teacher. She took pride in her appearance and in ours, and in one of her last visits to the doctor appointment that we were here with her for last month, she wanted to be dressed nicely. She could hardly walk, but it was important to her to be dressed nicely and to have her lipstick on before she went to the doctor. That was part of her taking care of herself. I remember as a child going downtown to Marshall Fields. Remember Marshall Fields, everybody? Going shopping. We always had our shopping sprees, and we went to designer outlets with Lisa, my cousin who was here, with her mom, my Aunt Freddie, and I, and they would go buy us all these designer outlet clothes and dresses, and they loved dressing us. And also, one of my mom's finest skills was her listening skills. She so genuinely listened to people and genuinely cared about them. It wasn't just, oh, let me just be nice. She really cared about what people had to say and had empathy and was a great encourager. And yeah, she was interesting and she was interested. So for the past 5 years, I've experienced more grief than I ever thought I could and would. First my father 5 years ago, many of you know, and then my son 3 years ago, and now my mom. So I have found comfort in this poem that I'm going to share with you, and I hope it comforts you as well. For grief. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you becomes fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes unsure, and some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss, and though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you when the silence of absence deepens. There are days when you wake up happy again inside the fullness of life until the moment breaks and you are thrown back onto the black tide of loss. Days when you have your heart back, you are able to function well until in the middle of work or encounter, suddenly with no warning, you are ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. Do you want Cindy?
Yeah, no.
Well, Cindy wants to say. Go ahead.
No, she doesn't.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
To call Sylvia's son Stephen.
If you could, just indulge me for a moment. After I wrote my mom's eulogy, my brother shared a card with me. My mom got many cards when she wasn't feeling well, but this one particular card fits her to a T, and I just want to read it to you. This is from one of my best friends in San Diego. When I moved there in 1981, she met Mom and Dad and they became best friends, which is not a shock. And they remained best friends, or really close friends, for 40-some years. And she wrote this card when I told her Mom wasn't doing well. Dearest Sylvia, I have loved you since the first time I met you. You've been my true inspiration for the dedicated working woman you are and were, and on top of raising a family. Everyone is better for knowing you. Your light will shine in all of us forever, sending you love and peace and prayers. I love you, Linda Fox. It was just so beautiful. So thank you, Linda, if you're watching. And it just fit my mom to a T. So on behalf of my brother, my sister, my niece, my nephews, Linda's great-granddaughter, or Mom's great-granddaughter, my wife, Corey, and my favorite aunt and my sweet sister of Mom, Arlene Plotkin, I'd like to welcome you. So many of our cousins and friends we've heard from, friends from Barclay Place, her Mahjong and Canasta friends, which she loved so much, plus teachers that she worked with for so many years. Thank you, Rabbi Falk, and to Peggy and Yehuda and their wonderful staff here. To Mom's caregivers and hospice workers who were truly amazing, particularly Beverly, Montserrat, Marcella, Hannah, and Howard from All Health, and Jenny, Sandy, and Nadine from Residential Hospice. And I'd also like to thank the wonderful ladies from Barclay who helped our planning the Shiva. They're truly amazing. So here's some quick history. I'm going to just quickly take you through Mom's life. She was born May 21st, 1929, which is amazing that we're talking about that, 94 years. She was born into a wonderful family, loving, caring, hardworking. My Bubby and Poppy, along with my favorite aunt, Arlene, and they were raised the old-fashioned way, with respect and love for elders, teachers, friends, and that's what Mom passed down to us. She was so loving, caring, considerate, sweet, and so much more. Fast forward, one fateful evening, Mom was on a double date with her girlfriend at a movie, and I don't know if some of you know this, some of you don't. And by the end of the date, she was holding hands behind the chair with her girlfriend's date. And that man was Louis Nagelberg, and her life was changed forever. Bubby and Poppy were wary, but Lou won them over. They were married in 1952, and 3 kids, 3 of us followed. Mom quit school when she was going to college to raise her family. From the South Side, Aunt Jeffrey, we moved to Lincolnwood. And Mom and Dad got us through grade school, junior high, high school, bar mitzvahs, and Hebrew school. And then when I left for college, Mom's life took a turn. She decided, as an empty nester, that she would go back to college. So she went back to Northeastern to get her teaching degree. We graduated the same year. And I'm not sure many kids could say that they graduated the same year as their mom. Dad was so proud, he rented out a McDonald's on McCormick. And he rented out a McDonald's and threw a blue jeans optional party. It was a graduation party with family, friends, dancing, and entertainment. It was awesome. It was a great idea, and the local paper even wrote it up. And then Mom, after that, embarked on an amazing, wonderful, and fulfilling 40-year teaching career. She taught grade school, junior high as a substitute teacher in Skokie and Lincolnwood school districts, and she finally retired at 91, which is pretty amazing. She always said how wonderful and fulfilling it was. She taught with teachers that I actually had in junior high. She subbed for them, which was amazing. She made lifelong friends, and that kept her going too after Dad passed in 2018. We would regularly run into her former students many times at grocery stores, restaurants, and they'd exclaim, "Hi, Mrs. N. Hi, Mrs. N. How you doing?" That's how they knew her in school. She taught so long that she actually taught some children of former students, this next generation. We marveled at her energy and resilience. She would get calls to sub at 6 a.m. and then head off to school. She would hardly ever say no because she wanted to help. She wanted to cover for her teachers, except on Mahjong and Canasta days. She would say no that because she had her girlfriends and she couldn't leave them hanging. She found herself alone after Dad passed 5 years ago. He was everything to her. And she was his caregiver before he passed. It was such a beautiful love story. Mom was strong. She immersed herself in her work. She immersed herself in Barclay Place with her friends, Mahjong, Canasta, social committee, musical productions. She kept so busy, and she still drove, and she always kept in touch with cousins and family. Linda mentioned it yesterday when we were talking. She wrote letters up until months ago. She didn't like email. We would send her emails and Alan would get it. But she wrote letters to people. She kept in touch with people. In May, on her 94th birthday of this year, Alan and I took her to Lou Malnati's with two of my close friends, Dave Miller and Steve Sorkin. And she was so thankful and happy, but they were thankful that they could share her birthday with her, as they loved her since we were kids. In May, on that trip, when I visited, I took her, Alan asked me, and I took her to her driving test in Deerfield. And she was really nervous. I had never seen her this nervous. I waited as a nice middle-aged lady took her for her actual driving test. And when they got back in 20 minutes, I was standing on the curb. And the lady came right up to me. And I thought she was going to tell me Mom passed. She didn't pass, whatever. And she said she had heard my mom's life story in the last 20 minutes. And I said, well, I'm not surprised. That was Mom. And she told me how lucky I was to have her be so smart, sharp, sweet at 94 and still so energetic. And she said, and yes, she's still a good driver. And I was like, wow. And she hugged me, and I told her I knew how lucky I was. It was awesome. I was so proud of her. So not only over the last 3 months of doctor's visits and hospital visits, but for the last 5 years since Dad passed, my mom would not have made it through it all and did what she accomplished without my brother Alan. He was there for Mom, for whatever she needed. He simply was amazing. He was a mensch. He was a caregiver, a driver, shopper, cheerleader. Thank you, Alan. Mom knew how lucky she was to have you, and we appreciate you so much. When I think of Mom, I will think of her loving, caring, sweet nature, her love of old friends and all the new friends she ever met, her love of dancing and singing, and even her second career as a matchmaker. She loved that. Sharon, she was very proud of that. I will think of her wonderful accomplishments, her love of the children that she taught, the teachers she taught with, and think of the lessons that she taught us and the amazing legacy she left with us. I hope, Mom, you're dancing with Dad in heaven today. You always made him look so good on the dance floor because she was such a good dancer. We will never forget you. We will always love you in our hearts. And your memory will continue to inspire us forever. We miss you and we love you.
I'd like to share a poem, Life is a Journey, by Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to old age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until, looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage to life everlasting. This week, this coming Shabbat, we'll be reading the second section of the Torah, Parshat Noach, the story of the flood. And this Parsha, the Torah portion, begins with Noah, and we're told that he was a righteous person in his generation. And the rabbis ask, well, what does it mean, a righteous person in his generation? Does it mean that in his generation he was righteous, and in a better generation he would have been even more righteous? Or only in his generation could he be considered righteous, and in a different time period he wouldn't be such a big deal? So this second approach is the one taken by the Baal Shem Tov, when he calls Noah a tzaddik bepeltz, a tzaddik in a fur coat. Well, what does that mean? Well, what could we criticize about Noah? The Torah recounts that he's responsible for saving the world. Well, but the problem is he only saved his family. I mean, he saved the animals and his family. What about everybody else? So the metaphor is, if you have a room that's very cold, what do? So there's two approaches. One is you can put on a fur coat. This is what the Baal Shem Tov is saying about Noah. You can make sure you're warm. The second approach is you can light a fire and you can warm the room up for everyone. And this seems to be what Noah didn't do, but what Sylvia did very well. She was a person who warmed people. She lit the fire wherever she went. She was someone who, now I have to say, I met her, the last month of her life as her hospice chaplain. I did see, even at this point, how charming she was, and I saw how much she loved her family and how much she missed her husband. But just talking with her family, I see she's a person who lived her life lighting the fire, warming other people, giving to other people, raising other people up. Only someone who thrives by giving to others substitute teaches until they're 91. That's an incredible achievement. And the way that her family talked about going around the area, and everywhere she was, she knew somebody. She knew many people. She knew former students. She knew people, acquaintances she'd made. It's because she cared about other people. She raised them up. She helped them. She listened. She was a compassionate person. And this is a quality that's oftentimes in short supply, right? There's many people who put on their fur coat when it gets cold, but Sylvia lit the fire, warmed everyone in the room. And this is an incredible legacy, an incredible thing that we can all learn from. We live in a society where oftentimes it's easy to just sort of stay in your lane and ignore people around you. And Sylvia teaches us that every acquaintance you meet is an opportunity, every person you interact with is an opportunity to positively impact their life. And that is a tremendous charge she leaves her family, and she leaves all of us. I'd like at this time to do the memorial prayer. If everyone can please rise. Elmele rachamim shochein b'miromim amsei menucha nuchona tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kiddushim utorim kazor rakiha mazhirim l'nishmat Sylvia bat Irving shalacha l'olamah bavur shanachnu mitpalim ba'ad haskarat nishmata b'gan eden tei menuchata Lahain bal rachamim yistareh b'secher kanafav lolamim v'yitzor b'torah chaim et nishmata Adonai hu nachlata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar amen. God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant fitting rest beneath the protective wings of the divine presence, where the souls of the holy and pure ones, whose radiance is like that of the heavens, reside to the soul of Sylvia, daughter of Irving, who has gone to her eternal reward, and in whose memory that we pray. May the Garden of Eden be her eternal resting place. For this reason, may the ever merciful one shelter Sylvia under his protective wings forever. May he bind her soul in the bonds of everlasting life. For the Lord will surely be her benefactor, so that she can rest in peace in her allotted place. And let us say, Amen.
This does conclude the service here at the chapel. The family will be receiving condolences at the Barclay Place Event Room. That's 4545 West Toohey. It'll be today starting at 4 o'clock until 8 p.m. and then tomorrow, Thursday, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. That information is on the folder. If you didn't get one when you entered the chapel, please get one when you leave, and it's also on our website. Interment will take place at West Lawn Cemetery, that's 7801 West Montrose Avenue in Norwich. The procession will be forming in the parking lot. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times, put your emergency blinkers on, attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield, and we'll also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers. When I call your names, if you'll please step forward. Andrea Finkelstein, Scott Nagelberg, Bill Mann, Steve Sorkin, Jim Shapiro, Henry Coulter, and Steve Bernstein. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise as the family and the rabbi are escorted from the chapel.